Welcome to the deep dive. We take on complex topics, unpack them, try and find those essential, sometimes surprising insights. Today, we're tackling something that affects millions but is, well, profoundly misunderstood. We're talking about severe fatigue. And not just, I need more coffee fatigue. This is like debilitating illness, completely changes what tired even means. Our focus. Myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome. MECFS. And specifically, we're looking at what's often called its mild presentation, that word mild. It hides a really intense, often invisible struggle. Our source today is it's a really comprehensive guide, bridges the gap between patient experience and the science. Really well done. So our mission today is to cut through that confusion, pull out the key insights so you can be truly informed, maybe help bust some myths, and hopefully shift how you think about resilience, especially when someone's facing this kind of invisible battle. By the end, you should really get the science behind MECFS and why it forces us to rethink strength and wellness.
Yeah, and it's so important to come at this with an open mind. MECFS it's really counterintuitive in many ways. Things like, sleeping all night but waking up feeling worse, or doing something minor and being wiped out for days. It goes against everything we think we know about how our bodies should work. And that's a big part of the problem, I think, why it's so misunderstood,
Yeah.
why this conversation is, well, really needed.
That's a great point to start on. So let's just tackle that biggest misconception straight away. MECFS is absolutely not just feeling tired. It's not all in your head. It's a physical illness. Profoundly physical.
Exactly, and we have backing for that. The World Health Organization, the WHO, they classify it. It's listed as a disease of the nervous system in the ICD, the International Classification of Diseases. Now, that's not just some label. It puts MECFS alongside conditions like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, serious neurological conditions. It highlights that it's biological, it affects multiple systems, nervous, immune, endocrine, and importantly, somewhere between 50 and 80% of cases, they actually start after an infection. Often something common, like Epstein-Barr virus, glandular fever. So the evidence really points toward a biological cause, not, something purely psychological.
Okay, so if the WHO is that clear neurological disease, why is it still so often mistaken for depression or burnout? What are the key differences people need to grasp?
That's such a critical question. The source material is really clear on this. Yes, there can be overlap. Fatigue can be a symptom in all of them. But the hallmark symptom, the defining thing, it's totally different. In MECFS, it's post-exertional malaise. We'll call it PEM. That's a severe worsening of all symptoms after even tiny bits of exertion. And it's delayed. That's fundamentally different from major depressive disorder, MDD, where the core issue is anhedonia, losing interest, pleasure in things, or occupational burnout, which is more about chronic exhaustion, cynicism, feeling ineffective, usually tied to work stress. And here's a key thing. With depression, sometimes gentle activity can actually help mood. With MECFS activity, exertion, it causes a systemic crash, harmful. And there's this concept of motivation versus capacity. People with MECFS often say they feel wired but tired, meaning the desire to do things, the motivation, it's there. It's often really high. But the physical and cognitive ability, the capacity, severely limited. That's quite different from MED, where often the motivation itself is diminished. Plus, you've got the unrefreshing sleep in MECFS, waking up just as tired, sometimes worse. Oh. And that very specific brain fog. Not just poor concentration, but slow thinking, trouble finding words. It's distinct.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do doctors actually diagnose it then? I know the UK's NICE guideline from 2021, NG206, set out a specific framework. These 4 pillars. Can you break those down for us? Why are they all essential?
Absolutely. These 4 pillars, they really capture the essence of MECFS. And yes, all 4 have to be there for at least 3 months. First, debilitating fatigue. And again, we have to stress, this isn't ordinary tiredness. It's profound. Often feels flu-like. It gets worse with any kind of activity, physical, mental, even emotional stress. And crucially, rest or sleep doesn't make it better. The NICE committee itself said fatigue is kind of an inadequate word for it.
Okay, debilitating fatigue. Got it. What's pillar 2?
Pillar 2 is the big one. Post-exertional malaise, PEM. This is the universally recognized hallmark. It's what really sets MECFS apart. And PEM has 3 key features you need to understand. First, a disproportionate response. The crash is way, way bigger than the activity that caused it. Like a short walk might lead to days, maybe weeks of being completely incapacitated.
Wow. Okay, disproportionate. What else?
Second, delayed onset. This is crucial. The worst of the crash doesn't usually hit right away. It often comes hours or even a day or 2 later, typically 12 to 72 hours after the activity. And third, prolonged recovery. Getting back to baseline, even their compromised baseline, is incredibly slow. can take hours, days, weeks, sometimes even longer. It's a period of feeling really unwell, systemically sick, not just tired.
So debilitating fatigue, PEM, with those three features. What are the other two pillars?
Third is unrefreshing sleep. Like we touched on, sleep just doesn't restore them. They wake up feeling exhausted, maybe stiff, flu-like, pretty much how they felt going to bed. It's not about not sleeping. It's about sleep not doing its job physiologically.
Right, the sleep isn't refreshing. And the fourth?
Fourth is cognitive difficulties, often called brain fog. And again, this isn't just being a bit forgetful. It's significant issues like slowed thinking, really frustrating trouble finding the right word. You know it's there, but you just can't retrieve it. Short-term memory problems.
Yeah.
And a real inability to multitask. Even trying to follow a conversation in a busy place can be too much, can actually trigger PEM.
Okay, so those four pillars, debilitating fatigue, PEM, unrefreshing sleep, and cognitive difficulties, they paint a picture of something pretty severe. Which brings us back to that word, mild. How can an illness with those criteria ever be called mild ME/CFS? It feels like a total contradiction.
It absolutely is. And it's frankly a dangerous misnomer. Understanding the NICE definition helps see why it's so misleading. They define mild ME/CFS basically as someone who can manage basic self-care, maybe some light domestic tasks, might struggle with mobility. They're often still working or studying, but, and this is the crucial part, they've likely had to stop all leisure and social activities to manage it. They're often working reduced hours, taking days off, using the entire weekend just to recover enough to maybe function the next week.
So mild actually means sacrificing almost everything else.
Exactly. It describes a life of, well, extreme and totally unsustainable sacrifice. Someone with mild ME/CFS is basically in constant energy triage. They're pouring almost every single drop of their severely limited energy into one main thing, usually work or school. To do that, everything else that makes life meaningful, social life, hobbies, family time, gone. Weekends aren't for enjoyment. They're for desperate, often inadequate recovery. It creates this facade of wellness. The employer sees someone functioning, maybe, but they don't see the collapse at home, the canceled plans, the isolation, and the term mild itself. It just fuels stigma. People hear mild and think minor issue, completely missing the devastating reality behind it.
That makes so much sense. It's like the word itself minimizes the actual experience. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. These symptoms, especially PEM, they're so counterintuitive. How can we make the science behind them more tangible? I know you have some analogies.
Yeah, analogies can be really helpful because the underlying science is complex and, like you said, counterintuitive. Let's start with the core energy problem. Think of it like the faulty smartphone battery. This explains the cellular energy failure. Imagine your phone battery. It never really charges to 100%, no matter how long you plug it in. That's like the unrefreshing sleep, the battery indicator. Totally unreliable. You think you have 50% left and suddenly it crashes to 5%. That's the unpredictable energy crashes. Even just the basic background apps like digestion, maintaining posture, processing sights and sounds, they drain the battery way too fast. And trying to run any demanding apps, even minor exertion, causes the phone to shut down.
Okay, faulty battery. What's the science connection there?
Right, the science behind it points to several things. Mitochondrial dysfunction is a big one. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells. They make energy. In ME/CFS, they seem to be damaged, fewer of them. Structural issues not working efficiently, like damaged batteries. This leads to impaired ATP production. ATP is the main energy molecule our body uses. Research suggests the processes that make ATP, like oxidative phosphorylation, are impaired. Key enzymes might not be working right. The body seems to enter a systemic hypometabolic state. It's actively trying to conserve the very limited energy it has. And then there's oxidative and nitrosative stress. When people with ME/CFS exert themselves, their systems kind of overheat metabolically, producing damaging molecules that worsen the energy deficit and cause other symptoms.
Wow, okay, so the faulty battery explains the underlying energy shortage. What about that hallmark symptom, PEM, the crash after exertion?
For PEM, think of the energy payday loan. Imagine you start each day with a very strict energy budget, say 100 units, non-negotiable, no overdraft facility. If an activity costs 120 units, the only way to do it is to take out a payday loan against your future health. But the interest rates are insane. Borrowing those extra 20 units might cost you 100, 200, maybe even 500 units in payback over the next few days or weeks. And critically, there's delayed billing. The invoice, the crash, doesn't hit immediately. It arrives 24 to 72 hours later.
The energy payday loan, that really captures the delayed consequence. Is there objective evidence for this kind of post-exertion problem?
Oh, absolutely. There's the 2-day cardiopulmonary exercise test, the 2-day CPET. It's powerful objective proof. Healthy people, or people with other conditions like heart failure, They can usually repeat their performance on day 2 of this strenuous test. People with ME/CFS cannot. They show a significant, measurable drop in things like peak oxygen consumption, VO2 max, on the second day. Their bodies physiologically cannot replicate the effort. It's objective evidence of dysfunction triggered by exertion. We also see immune and inflammatory activation post-exertion. Specific pro-inflammatory cytokines, think of them as chemical messengers signaling distress, go up, causing those flu-like symptoms. There's autonomic nervous system dysfunction, gets worse, things like heart rate variability changes, problems with blood pressure control like orthostatic intolerance, getting dizzy when standing up, and HPA axis dysregulation, that's the body's main stress response system. It's often blunted in ME/CFS, particularly the cortisol awakening response, CAR, that natural cortisol surge in the morning. A lower CR is linked to worse PEM severity.
So the payday loan isn't just a metaphor. It reflects real, measurable physiological changes. Okay, what about the cognitive issues, the brain fog?
For brain fog, let's use the analogy of the downgraded internet connection. Imagine your brain usually runs on high-speed fiber optic. With ME/CFS, it feels like you've been forcibly downgraded to an old, unstable dial-up modem from the 90s. What does that mean? Slow processing speed. Things take much longer to load, mentally reading, understanding instructions. You get lost data packets. That's like the word-finding difficulty. The information is there, but you can't access it. The connection drops. And inability to multitask. The bandwidth is so limited, trying to run too many tabs at once just freezes the system.
Downgraded internet, that's relatable. And the science behind that.
Yeah, it links to several findings. There's evidence of neuroinflammation, low-grade inflammation in the brain. Think of it like static on the line, disrupting clear signals. Brain imaging studies have shown markers like elevated lactate or choline. We also see a reduced cerebral blood flow or hypoperfusion. Basically, parts of the brain aren't getting enough oxygen and glucose, the fuel they need. And functional MRI studies show altered brain activity and connectivity. The brain seems to have to work harder, recruit different, often less efficient, pathways to try and complete tasks, like the internet router trying to find a less damaged path for the signal.
These analogies are incredibly helpful. They really show how interconnected it all is, don't they? The faulty battery creates the energy debt, leading to the payday loan crash of PEM, which then further slows down that internet connection, worsening the brain fog.
Precisely. It's not just separate symptoms. PEM is really the central pathological process where everything, the metabolic issues, the immune activation, the neurological problems kind of converges and creates this downward spiral. And understanding that cycle is why avoiding PEM through really careful energy management becomes the absolute cornerstone of managing ME/CFS. It's not about choice. It's about preventing further biological harm.
Okay, so we've established ME/CFS is this complex, physically debilitating illness. But what happens when someone living with this faces a world that, well, that just doesn't get it? Or worse, doesn't believe them? The social side, the psychological impact must be huge.
Oh, immense. It's often described as being as debilitating as the physical symptoms. Patients constantly hit this wall of misconceptions. They hear things that are incredibly invalidating. The source material actually gives great science-based responses to common ones, like, but you look so good. The response, thanks, but ME/CFS is invisible. What you're seeing is careful management. You don't see the days I can't get out of bed.
Right. Or the classic, maybe you're just depressed.
Yeah. Response. Actually, it's classified as neurological. And unlike depression, where activity can help, exertion physically harms me, triggering PEM. My motivation is high. My physical capacity isn't.
What about if you just exercised more? That seems common.
Dangerously common.
Yeah.
Response. That's actually harmful for ME/CFS. The official NICE guidelines warn against graded exercise because it causes PEM. My body has a proven issue with energy production at a cellular level.
Have you tried being more positive?
Response. A positive attitude is great, but it can't fix mitochondrial dysfunction or neuroinflammation, suggesting it implies this illness is somehow my fault.
And the one that must follow PEM. But you went out yesterday.
Exactly. Response. Yes, and I'm paying the price today. That is PEM, the delayed energy payday loan I took out yesterday.
Or just, everyone gets tired.
Response. The fatigue in ME/CFS is profound, flu-like, and comes with neurological and immune symptoms totally different from normal tiredness. Even the guideline authors said fatigue doesn't cover it.
It's so important to understand that these aren't just insensitive comments. They're genuinely harmful, right? They can make things worse.
Absolutely. The stigma around ME/CFS is like a social disease layered on top of the physical one. There's the external battle. Huge levels of stigma. Studies show up to 95% feel estranged, 70% think doctors believe it's psychological. This leads to blame, people minimizing their suffering, social isolation, lost friendships, and the lack of a simple diagnostic test fuels that skepticism. But then there's the internal battle, internalized stigma. Patients start doubting themselves, feeling guilty, ashamed. This can lead them to try and perform wellness, push themselves too hard.
Which triggers PEM.
Exactly, which triggers a PEM crash, reinforcing those feelings of failure. It's a vicious cycle. And this constant battle, living with a severe illness in a disbelieving world, that can lead to secondary depression and anxiety, even suicidal thoughts. Not because ME/CFS is inherently psychiatric, but because of the devastating impact of the illness and the stigma combined.
It sounds incredibly isolating and difficult. So given all this, what practical tools can people use for survival, for advocacy? How do you navigate this?
Number one, without a doubt, is pacing. Energy management. This isn't optional. It's a medical necessity. It's about proactively managing your extremely limited energy to stay within your energy envelope, specifically to avoid triggering PEM. It often involves tracking activities, using heart rate monitors, being very data-driven. And importantly, the 2021 NICE guidelines strongly supports energy management and explicitly recommends against graded exercise therapy, GET, because GET triggers PEM. Pacing is about preventing harm.
Okay, pacing is key. What else?
Second, communicating your limits effectively. Those analogies we talked about, they're great practical scripts. Instead of just saying, I can't, try declining an invite with, my energy battery is really low today. Doing that would drain it completely and cause a crash later. Or leaving early, I've hit my limit, my internet connection is getting really slow, I need to stop now to avoid taking out a massive energy payday loan for the rest of the week. Concrete metaphors often land better than just, I'm tired.
That's really practical, using the analogies as communication tools.
Yeah. And finally, finding your community. This is so vital. Connecting with other people who get it is a lifeline against the isolation. In the UK, there are excellent organizations. Action for ME, the ME Association, ME Research UK, Invest in ME Research, also BACME for clinicians. They offer support, information, a sense of belonging.
This has been such an illuminating deep dive. We've really clarified ME/CFS as a serious neurological illness, dismantled that misleading mild label, used those analogies to make the science clearer, and crucially, highlighted the devastating impact of disbelief and stigma.
And hopefully, it helps redefine what resilience looks like in this context. It's definitely not about pushing through. Real resilience here is the immense courage it takes to accept profound limitations. It's the disciplined daily art of energy management. It's the sheer strength needed to keep advocating for your own reality when the world often denies it.
Understanding the science, having the language, it feels like such a crucial first step towards getting appropriate care, compassion from everyone, really.
It really is. So maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. How might understanding ME/CFS better, really understanding it, push us to rethink our broader cultural ideas about strength and wellness? Not just for this illness, but for all chronic conditions, especially the invisible ones. Perhaps it prompts us to look past the surface more often and to truly listen to the unseen struggles happening all around us.
A really powerful thought. Thank you so much for walking us through all that, and thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights.